What's the last commercial you saw for Depends? There's a reason for that I want to get into in just a moment. In the book of Leviticus, in case you don't know, Depends is diapers for old people. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 32, it says, "You shall stand up before the gray head and honor the face of an old man, and you shall fear your God. I am the Lord." Something about people who have gray hair, who are older, this verse says that we need to honor. It doesn't need to tell us to honor people who are young because we have a youth-obsessed culture. We naturally do honor and take care of the really, really young. But the Bible has to take really special precautions to make sure that we understand that we should honor the old. In many ancient cultures or current communal cultures across the globe, this isn't like a crazy idea, but for our youth-obsessed culture in America, this is a crazy idea. There's something powerful about somebody who has gray hair that isn't present in somebody who's 22. There's a weight, there's a gravitas to somebody who is a bit older. One of the most impactful people in my life is an older gentleman. His name is Gil Hopkins. He died a number of years ago. I met him the very first week I was in Cincinnati. When I moved to Cincinnati in 1995. And he was a great friend of mine. He was an older brother of mine. He was a father figure for me. He was a warrior with me. He just an amazing man. And he died and left a hole in my life. Because when you lose somebody who's older and has wisdom to trickle down to you, that's not easily replaced. I called him called his wife this last week, or widow this last week, because it was his birthday. And so I'll call her and try to encourage her. And I forget when I call, if she's not there, the answering machine kicks on, and Joanne has chosen to leave Gil's voice recording on the answering machine. So it kind of jolts me when I hear Gil saying he's not home and all that kind of stuff. Because just the sound of the voice brings back amazing memories of me being blessed by his influence. Our culture doesn't promote the influence and how we should honor people who are older than us. And there's some good reasons for that. We live in a media-driven culture. Arts and media are king in our culture, rules in our culture. We set the tone for arts and media across the entire globe. And what is the driver with arts and media? Money. What's the driver with arts and media? Advertising. Why does television exist? Television exists largely, thankfully, to Procter & Gamble. Because they had to create a way for us to learn about their soap, and that's how we have soap operas. And then soap operas went and innovated on a whole different kinds of things. And for art to really be consumed in mass, it doesn't have to be good, it has to be sellable. The masses have to be into it. And what this means is people want to advertise their products in places where people are going to consume them. And who's most likely to consume things? People who are younger. The older you are, the more brand loyalty you have. You've been crushed your whole life. You're not going to go check out Colgate Total. If you're younger, your brand, you're still okay. Not only that, if you're older, it's a harder sell. Because you realize that there's hype behind commercialism, and you're just like, oh, you're harder to sell than somebody who is younger. When you're older, even if the show isn't filled with commercials, when you're older, you're very unlikely to have Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Hulu, and whatever thing is out there. But when you're younger, you're like, oh, I want this. And so all of our sort of mass communication vehicles tend to trend younger, and unfortunately, on the downside of that, it means we don't see and don't affirm and don't understand the value of people who are older. When's the last commercial you saw for Depends? Fix-A-Dent, Centrum. Our culture is driven to sell to the young, and therefore our culture is more prone to go and exalt the young. And if we only have the young in our lives, and I'll mention in a moment, we have to have the young in our lives. If we only have the young in our lives, we're going to miss a source of power that's going to keep us from thriving. In the Old Testament, we see the nation of Israel goes through a lot of dips and turns. And they have a really great King David. Then they get one that's, he's okay. It's David's son Solomon. And then when the wheels really start to come off in the people of God, the nation of Israel, is in Solomon's son Rehoboam. And it comes off in this issue of whether or not he will choose age or whether he will choose youth, here's what happens. The king Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he was yet alive, and he said, "How do you advise me to answer this people, the rest of the nation of Israel?" And they said to him, "If you will be a servant to this people today and serve them and speak good words to them, when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever." But he abandoned the counsel of the old men. Abandoned their counsel, and he took counsel with the young men, with the young bucks who had grown up with him and who had stood before him. And he said to them, "What do you advise me to answer this people who have said to me, 'Lighten the yoke that your father put on us'?" And the young men who had grown up with him said to him, "Thus shall you speak to this people who said to you, 'Your father made our yoke heavy, but you lighten for us.' For shall you say this to them? Say this, 'My little finger is thicker than my father's thighs. And now, whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions.'" Young bucks get all like, you show them who's boss. You tell me, you think my dad had muscular thighs? No. He was a bony boy. I'm on steroids. My finger's bigger than him. Not only that, you got scorpions coming your way if you don't do what I want. And he bows up and he starts to lose the nation of Israel, and rebellion, everything breaks out because he goes the way of youth. Now, before I talk any more about this, let me make sure we all understand something. If you have an organization, or if you have a business or influence in an organization or a business, you should have the top of your priority list, how is it that we are appealing to young people and having young people in our organization? Organizations that are growing and healthy and vibrant, or businesses or whatever, one thing they all have in common is they all always have young people. Maybe this is because with youth there's a level of energy that you might not have when you're older in life. Maybe this is because when you're youthful you have an idealistic idea that everything is just black and white. You have this idealism that's healthy to have there. Maybe it's because if you don't have young people around then you can't reach young people. I don't know why it is, but I'm just telling you over and over, this is a theme that's studyable in all the sociological communal spheres of our time. Jesus understood this, or Jesus maybe created this. I don't know which. One of his miracles, like weird miracles, he told Peter to go fishing because they were being asked to bring the tax for the temple. And he says, "Go fishing and you'll find something." Peter goes and fishes, and there's money inside the fish, like crazy. Like Jesus would know that this fish had been bottom feeding and eating money, or I don't know how it got there, but crazy story. And he says, "There's enough for me and you." What this means is you had to be 19 in order to be taxed by the temple system. So Jesus is supplying the tax for the only two people who needed it in his original 12 disciples, him and Peter. Everyone else was under 19. There's a reason Peter and Jesus were the only people who were older. I don't know how old Peter was, but we know Jesus chose to start his movement with those who were young. If we're not valuing and getting young people around us, we're going to calcify. Young people need old people because there's wisdom and power there, and there's an honoring that just unlocks something in the spiritual realm. And old people need younger people because there's a vitality there. There is a simplicity there. There's something there that, and the generations have to mix. And our culture doesn't understand this. In fact, our culture is doing everything it can to keep us young in all ways. We have all kinds of, Botox treatments. I'm not anti-Botox, but I'm just saying, man, that $1 billion industry can come up just to keep us looking young because we feel like if I don't look young, then I'm not going to be accepted. It says something about our culture. One of the more intriguing studies I've seen recently was a study that included 340,000 people in different cultures. They tried to figure out who was happiest. Everyone from 18 to 85, they surveyed them over a period of time and looked at their life and figured out if there was anything to learn about being happy. And here's an interesting thing I found. Happiness, life's going good. When 18 happens, your happiness goes down. It's on a steady free fall, your happiness from 18 all the way to 50. Then 50, you spike. And it keeps going up until you're 85 and you need the pens. And then it goes right back down again. Fascinating. Here's what this study says. It's very encouraging fact that we can expect to be happier in our early 80s than we were in our 20s. And it's not being driven predominantly by things that happen in life. It's something very deep and quite human that seems to be driving this. I know for me, I'm 51. I'm having the best years of my life. I can't remember a time I wasn't happy. I've always had times that are difficult. But man, my happiness quotient 51 is crazy. But culture would tell me, no, you can't be happy because your hair's going gray and you got this happen. It's crazy. And what happens is the longer you're around life, there's sort of a power you start to possess. I don't know if it's a power of figuring out life. Not all old people, by the way. A lot of old people are just buttheads. You don't want to be around them. A lot of them are just cantankerous people. They really are. But when you have a life that's well lived, the older you get, man, you want to be around those people. Now, just 3 quick bank shot ideas as to why God might say over and over and over and over again to honor people who are older. Here's some idea. 1, age correlates to wisdom, and God is wisdom. There's a kind of learning that you can't get in a classroom. You can only get by walking down the streets of life. And the more you go around the lap in this life, the more you're able to see patterns and to see realities, and the more wisdom that you have. And this is a wisdom that comes from God. So in this area, the older people are more like God. So when we're around older people, they've got something about God that the young don't have that only can be gained by living life and figuring out life. The second possibility is that age confers authority, and God is authority. Isn't it true? I mean, you just get around some people who when they speak, people listen, right? It's like, and those people tend to be older, but there's just an authority to them. I'm not saying they have a badge or they have a nameplate. There's just an authority about someone who's lived a life well and they're older in age, and this is because God is an authority. We're representing and understanding His power, His depth, His transcendence. And this is why God gave very, very clear instructions for the young to honor the old, especially your parents. Here's what He says in Ephesians 6, which quotes one of the top 10 commandments. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. That's what that commandment is there for. If you want your life to thrive, He says, honor your parents. My gosh, this is so crazy today. My gosh, this is crazy. Like, 30-year-olds think they're supposed to be friends with 6-year-olds. No, you're not supposed to be friends with 6-year-olds. You're supposed to get your 6-year-old to obey you and to understand their honor for you is a sign of whether or not their life will thrive. Don't be their friend. Be their authority. Be their elder. Same with someone who's 14. My gosh, you're getting there, but man, you need your parents' wisdom. And I'll tell you another thing we talk about so much is micromanaging. Oh, my manager's micromanaging. You know what that often means? It often means there's someone who's older than me who's telling me what to do. That's not micromanaging you. That's being a good leader. You don't understand because you haven't run the accounts as long as that person. That's not micromanagement. That's just good management. But our culture has all these new buzz phrases to say, I don't care how old you are. I don't care who you are. You can't tell me what to do. You can't give me any information that I don't already know. And friends, this doesn't lead to a life that thrives. Maybe the final reason why God is into the old is because the older you are, the more scars you have. Physical scars, emotional scars, intellectual scars. Some of these are self-inflicted or self-welcomed because of the scars of sacrifice. The older you are, the more you've sacrificed. And God has sacrificed, who actually stretched out His arms, put His feet together, and was nailed to a cross out of sacrifice. When we look at somebody who's got scars, they have an element of God about them. Hey, here's an idea this week. Let's honor people who have built into us. Maybe there's an elder in your life who's building you. Go on your social media feeds, call them out, say thank you for this person, and put hashtag how to thrive. It would be a good start. How do you thrive? You thrive by honoring your elders.